Our hearts and prayers with the Pastor with No Answers and Bear With community family goes out to our nonprofit partnering organization, Donor C. Their founder passed away tragically last week, and we love you guys. We're in shock with you. Some of us who are listening are going to take 10 seconds to just lift you up in prayer real quick. All right, so we got some gooey stuff, like some warm, fuzzy, touchy-feely stuff, some Joey stuff. Now, there's chapter markers in place if you want to skip. Go on, we love you. It's down to business for the regular listeners. All right, now that the assholes are gone, let me read something. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. This is my heart. This is the heart of the show, the community that our patrons participate in. A grievance. That's heavy. It even sounds heavy. It's something not easy to forgive. A grievance. You grieve it. We don't seem to be willing to forgive people who grieve us. We don't seem to be willing to even try. It's like we're rationalizing a way out of this. Maybe it's just too hard to try. I don't know. But I would say an enemy it's highly probable to fall into the someone who grieves me category. Does the other side of an issue grieve you, for example? What's that look like to love them? So here's the reality. If the church specifically, if we're not willing to try and lovingly unite in spite of the big ones, like we're talking about on this episode, we're in trouble. Because I don't know if you can tell, we're not agreeing on anything anytime soon. And I have people tell me that I can't even be friends with people who are wrong in certain areas. So how do I love my enemies? So this is something that we're really trying to figure out as a community, as a podcast. And in this episode, you will hear unaffirming and affirming Christians share their hearts while loving one another. It's really what we're about. So the Bear With community is also a community in which you just don't have to be alone in different seasons of life. We're starting our first purpose group. That sounds real good and churchy. It's a way to love and bear with one another in similar seasons of life or maybe a common interest. And the first one that we are starting is a parent group. Now, we do have a spouse group coming up, a deconstruction book club coming up, but this parent one, you'll hear different parents in our community share on the podcast feed just for you. Different parents, different backgrounds, wealth of knowledge. I can't wait. I mean, my gosh, I wish I had this in my early years of parenting. This parenting group, like all the other purpose groups, you can participate how much and however you want. Maybe you'll just listen and read what others are saying. But there'll also be opportunities for parents who actually want to meet and hang, build relationships with maybe like another set of parents. Really cool. October, Becca McNeil, who wrote Bringing Up Kids When Church Lets You Down, a guide for parents questioning their faith. She will be joining this parent group for a Q&A and a discussion about that important topic. I don't know about you, but I started deconstructing right in the middle of being a dad, and it was scary. We've got a fun meet and greet happening in July for those of you that want to support conversations like this and this community and podcast in general. We have been having a raffle, and next week is the big one. It's the big one, a Virgil Svensson original painting and the bass guitar that was played in the first Emery show. But let me give you some winners. Today we have Zach Madirez. What's up, Zach? I like just fiddling around with your last name. You just won a Mount Fuji shirt from my closet. It's kind of weird that you would even want that. It's weird, man. Andy Denton, you won 2 packs of these scripture cards that were given to me by a bad Christian listener back in the day. They're kind of neat. You can pass one off maybe to another set of parents. Juan Mendoza, you get a used copy of the book Heroin is the Answer. It's an autobiography from Russell Westbrook of the band Joe Christmas and his journey through a heroin addiction. Logan Robinson, I hope you're a soccer fan because you get a 1991 box of soccer cards, all unopened, man. Matt Oxley, you get a free t-shirt, even though you'd probably get a free t-shirt anyway. And then Abraham Garcia, you've got a free t-shirt. So if any of you want to enter in for this last big raffle, the last big hurrah, the big shebang, we've made it really easy for you in the show notes to do so. Very proud of this community, very proud of what is accomplished just in this one episode. Hope you enjoy it. But before that, we're going to listen to some of the Pastor with No Answers ladies. In episode 343, I introduce a ladies edition of Pastor with No Answers. It's called A Bisexual Problem Drinker and Ass Kicker. All 3 of these ladies, close friends of mine, and I enjoyed listening to what they had to say, but I had to have a follow-up, and this is what you will hear. So context is everything if you want to listen to 343 first. Otherwise, go for it. You'll probably pick up on it. Y'all aren't dumb.
Yeah. Gosh, it is so crazy how much I've changed. It's just
the same thing,
so crazy.
Just the last couple of days. Yeah.
Because Rose is so curious of my views about stuff because she's the only one that remembers my views when they were very fundamentalist. Like she remembers. And so for her, it's like, wow. One thing I wrote down, Liz, I've been a grandpa my whole life because I like telling the same stories over and over and over. But y'all, I'm going to put Liz on the spot. Liz, would you still hold true to this? But you told me that when you came to the church, met me and Priscilla, whatever the situation was, at some point, God told you that you were going to work at Seacoast, James Island. You told me that God told you that. Looking back, would you still say God spoke to you?
If I use those words, I know from my standpoint right now, I would say, Joey, I didn't say those exact words. I said, I felt like God was calling me to that. However, if I did say those words, like regardless, if I said that, then I would not agree with that. Like he did not speak to me audibly. That is people's own idea of what they want. And then if they have a passion for it, then they like to say that God told them.
Now, have you have you lost all belief in God speaking clearly to you about something? Is that not even in your frame of reference?
I would say I feel like
why'd you marry Alex? Was it just you fell in love, or was there also like, I think this feels right. I feel like God is cool with this.
Okay, so to be honest, I felt like
you went rogue with Alex. You went totally.
I fell in love, and she's amazing with my kids. I had never laughed so much in a year than I had in years. But I honestly can't say that I felt like it was God telling me to be with Alex. I felt like that was Alex and I's own chemistry and our own. I'm not saying that he didn't maybe, bring us together in some way, but I don't feel like
it's almost like you have free will, almost.
Yeah. I don't feel like he's the one that necessarily was like, this is going to happen, then this is going to happen. But I feel like, he probably knew we would be really great together, but orchestrated. That's what I was going to say. I don't necessarily feel like he orchestrated everything. I feel like Alex and I were in the right place at the right time. And I think a great chance that God knew that was going to happen.
Well, it's like none of my damn business because it's not God speaking to me. But even hearing Liz say that, I'm thinking God may be bigger than even this conversation. I still think God may have put something in your heart because think about the Millers and the Svensons, our kids, how close they are, you and Priscilla's relationship, that all started or that all accelerated when we all started working together. So I mean, I'm with you. Like I probably wouldn't rest my head at night thinking, yeah, that was definitely God. But at the same time, who knows if, or if God saw those desires and said, yeah, I'm going to let those desires run their course because that's what I want to.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree.
Semantics, spiritual semantics.
Heart. I mean, yeah, he put that in my heart to fall for her.
Amy, did you say that you met Joshua the day that he died? Did I hear that correctly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You met him the day he died.
Yeah.
See, when you said that, I was like, "Oh my!"
Podcast, because I was like, "Amy, it's your fault." Yeah. I don't think you did.
Yeah.
You don't think what?
I don't know if it made it to the podcast when you were editing it, but I didn't realize that either. And sweet Amy was like, that was the first day I met him, and I was like, "It's your fault." She was like,
"Oh my! Don't tell Amy something like that."
I know. Listen, I did.
I'm kidding.
I did muse on that for a little while. I was like, "It's not really my fault. Like, she's just kidding."
You guys are into some wacky voodoo shit, if that's the truth.
Ellen, check this out, though. I think this is crazy, too. So a guy that over time we got to know really well because he worked there for so long. But there's a guy that Liz's husband actually hired to work at the bar that Joshua just opened up, hired him on a Saturday night. Joshua dies the next day. This dude's got to come to the restaurant and basically say, "You don't know me, but I was hired yesterday." Isn't that crazy? Like he found out that Joshua died and he was like, "Well, how do I inform someone that Joshua hired me?" Right?
Just this last week, my dad said he called. My dad's like 70 now, so his friends are dying. But he said that he called his friend that he hadn't talked to in like 10 years or something, and they caught up and he had so much fun. They laughed a lot, and then later that night, his friend died. He found out the next day. It was like sudden, didn't have an illness or anything. And so he called his other friend, the next day. He was just processing that. Like, I said, "Dad, I think you did. I think you might have done that. I think you killed him." And he said that he called the next day. He called one of his other mutual friends and his friend Joe, and he told Joe the story. And Joe's like, "Well, don't call me." All these old guys don't want to talk to my dad now because they're worried they're going to die.
This is going to be something that we do regularly. I'm thinking quarterly. I can guarantee you that this is a pretty diverse bunch as far as how we all see this. I'm excited because I have kind of a background knowledge, and I know that also everybody's coming to the table with the intent of love. Here's what I'd like to do just to break the ice. I would love for on this Zoom call for 3 of you just to give a shout out. Where are you at? And how did you end up on this Zoom call before we move on? And I'm not playing. Got to be 3 people.
All right, Dog, go on.
Thanks, Quincy. And Dog.
What's the,
like, where are you at?
Meaning?
City. Nothing philosophical. Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were going deep.
Yeah, I thought we were going deep. I'm like, thanks. That was a good introduction.
We are not in Phoenix City. We're in Birmingham, Alabama.
Birmingham, Alabama. Yeah.
Awesome. And the connection to this group.
I just stumbled across the podcast, I guess. I never listened to Bad Christian, but I just, last fall stumbled across it, and I was like, this is good.
Cool.
Good stuff.
I'm Marco, and I am
Marco.
and I am in the suburbs of Philly, and I got into the group through the podcast through Pastor with No Answers.
Sweet. One more.
I'm Andy. I'm in Charleston, and I go to Seacoast, the campus where Joey goes to.
Yep. I like the stash, man. You're rocking it.
Summer stash.
For a split second, I did not know who you were for a split. Oh, that's Andy.
And I can't see without my glasses anymore, so it's
You
hard.
look so European.
All right, so I'm going to tell you guys up front about a question that's going to be coming down the pipeline here in a second, because it's one of those things you'll have to think about, and you are not required to answer it. But here on Zoom, I want you to be thinking about, and be honest. If you answer, be honest. How many gay people are you friends with? And you may not be friends with any gay people because you haven't met any, and that's okay. But I'm curious, and we are actually going to put that in the chat. But for right now, you can answer this right away. On a scale of 1 to 10, rate where you're at with anger when it comes to this discussion. 10 meaning that it just pisses you off and you almost can't even be here because it's so frustrating to even that a conversation is needed. And then 1 would be, I've kind of made peace with this. I get where we're at. So put that in the chat. I'm curious. I did think it would be a good idea for me to share a snapshot of my journey because it's so relevant to the questions that we're talking about today. And so I'll tell you a story, and it ends, it's like a really extreme ending. But basically, I want to show you guys my heart when it was unaffirming. And so I thought about when Priscilla and I, we were married for about 2 years. We were working in a restaurant at Iowa. We met a friend. His name was Jason Gage, obviously gay. And then we found out it was confirmed that he was gay. And basically, I found out he was a big Green Bay Packer fan. Priscilla and I went to a Packer game when we were in Iowa. I bring Jason back a keychain. It was a nice keychain. I wanted it, but I gave it to him. It's his present. You could tell the walls just fell down. Somehow he knew we were Christians, and he had built up walls. You could just tell. Well, the walls came down because he was like, oh, I guess these guys are cool with me. And we really became good friends with him. And if the only thing my little unaffirming self was troubled with is, I wish I could just hang out with this guy and not worry about his soul. Like, that's seriously, that's so frustrating. I think gay guys are some of the most fun guys to hang out with. And I used to just not be able to enjoy it because I'm just constantly thinking about their soul. So anyway, the extreme ending is that we found out like 3 months after we left Iowa that he was actually murdered, and it was a gay hate crime. It's been a long time, but it's still kind of, when I got that email from Priscilla's mom, I mean, I was just absolutely floored. So that's a sad story, but I reflect on that friendship fondly. This one breaks my heart, and I may not be able to say it without crying. Like, this is literally one of the best friends I've ever had. And there was suspicion that he may be gay. Is just kind of like him and I traveled up the East Coast for spring break, and the suggestion for him to sleep in the same bed with me, he was like, no, oh my God, no, how would you ever think that we would do that? And he, laid on the ground. If you've ever been downtown Charleston, you've seen a gigantic black man singing opera. This is who I'm talking about, Richard Blakeney. When he came out, we were young, but him and I had gone our separate ways. We weren't in touch with each other. This is a guy for a season of life was the only person that I talked deep things with, really close. When I found out he was gay, my feelings towards him didn't change at all, but I was completely unaffirming. All I did was basically, I asked him, I was just like, hey man, I love you. This doesn't change anything, but why are you being so vulgar, on Facebook? Like, why are you like, I'm heterosexual, but you don't hear me talking about, my body parts in a vulgar way. And I'm thinking he just was transitioning into the hardest season probably he's ever gone through. And that's all I could give him was, well, why are you being vulgar? And our friendship was never, ever the same. He was never mean to me. I would say we were still friends, but I just tried to reconnect that. And it may just be that he had moved on. He's in another season of life. I believe that I wasn't there for him in his probably toughest moments. And he passed away. He's my age. And so that was a huge shocker when he did. But that's just a tough one for me because I couldn't fix that. And I totally understand where he's coming from. So all that to say, the reason why I shared that is those two stories was a complete unaffirming person. I believe I really screwed up in that second relationship, but it was coming out of ignorance It was not coming from a place of, I cannot believe this, anger. I think it's super interesting. I texted Hunter and Liz to basically tell them the questions that we were going to focus on. And I just think this is so great. I was telling Priscilla at dinner that basically I thought Hunter made a great suggestion. My opening question that I thought would be good to ask is, can you genuinely love a gay person and not be affirming? And Hunter said, well, we all know you can do that. Maybe a better way of framing it is, can I feel genuinely loved by someone who loves me but isn't affirming? And I was like, oh yeah, totally. That makes complete sense. And Liz completely chimed in and said, totally disagree. So if I'm not mistaken, Liz, you would say Joey Svensson cannot truly love Liz Miller if I was not affirming to your marriage. Correct? I don't know.
I think it would be a superficial love. And I think that it's one of those situations that sometimes people like to say, I love you, but there's no but. I love you or I don't. And the choice for me marrying a woman is not the same as me choosing to do drugs or drink alcohol or have, a lifestyle where I eat junk food. Those choices, you can love somebody despite those choices. The choice for me, who I love, that's not the same kind of choice. So if you say, I love you, but I don't agree with your lifestyle, that's not really loving me. And that's okay. You might respect me and you might be able to have a conversation with me, but you don't truly love me because that's who I am.
Gotcha. So basically you're saying you're not truly loving me as a person.
Yeah, not genuinely. I think people love to say that. But if you think deep down, I would never say, I love you, Joey, but I don't like Priscilla. If I love you, then if you love Priscilla and that makes you happy and you have a wonderful life and a wonderful family, then I'm happy for you. Being with her has there's no condition on that.
And the game changer for me, and then we'll send it off to Hunter to see what he thinks about it. The game changer for me, and Liz, you know this, you've heard it 100 times, is for some people, it boils down strictly to their beliefs that they wish weren't even true. I wish that wasn't even in the Bible. It'd make it a lot more simple. And that's why I can see someone saying, I love the hell out of Liz. In fact, I know people that truly, truly love you. And if you were to probably push them for an answer, they'd say, no, I guess I don't agree with that. And the people I'm thinking of, they're like, I don't care. I love Liz. I love Alex. But I love what Liz said. I mean, I'm totally, that's a really it's just interesting. Hunter, what do you think, man? And do you still fellowship with unaffirming people?
I do. As far as my friendships, I have unaffirming friends. I had to.
Liz, does that blow you away?
No. And I have unaffirming friends, I have people that I know that probably don't agree with it. And I accept it for face value. I don't think they genuinely love me in the way that I feel like I deserve to be loved. However, I do not cut people out of my life just because they disagree.
No, I think obviously I resonate with a lot of what she said because I'm engaged, and it does feel like kind of an attack on my family that I'm building in some sense. But I do think just logically, I thought about this all day, this question. I think I came to the conclusion that yes, you can truly love someone if you're unaffirming. I think what I kind of equated it to, because I used to be unaffirming too, even as a gay person. I think what I equated it to was maybe divorce and remarriage, how someone can be like, I love you, but maybe your choice in getting divorced and remarried wasn't the best choice. And I don't think that was a good choice for you. And that person genuinely loves their spouse.
That's a really good example.
But why do you have to compare it to something that is hard to go through? Why not compare it to somebody of a different race where there's nothing wrong with being a different race, but being divorced, that causes, not that I'm not saying it's bad at all, but that causes pain and it's difficult. So why do we compare that to pain and not compare it to something else that's more equivalent?
Yeah, it could be a false equivalency, but I just think, well, they truly love each other. Say this couple that remarried after divorce, they truly love each other. So just as I truly love my fiance, I think in that way it's similar, because it's like, well, my friend, I don't agree with their divorce. I don't agree that they remarried, but they really love their spouse that they remarried. So I think that's how I drew the connection.
Yeah. And I could say the same thing. Why do you get an opinion on if somebody gets a divorce or not? You know, and I'm not saying that at you. I promise I'm not attacking you, Hunter.
No, I know.
You as a generalization. Right. Why do people get to say, I love you, but I really don't agree with the fact that you got divorced? That's their choice. They're not harming themselves. And that's, again, where I feel like Christians, have these things that have been indoctrinated into them to believe that you shouldn't get divorced and you shouldn't, be a homosexual. And so when people start doing these things, it just like rocks their world, because that's just what they know. And same for me. It's all I knew for a really long time. And then thank God I got out of a bubble, because that's just not life.
Where I was going with it was more because the question was, can you love? Is it possible to love someone while being unaffirming? And I think my answer to that is yes. And obviously there's all these nuances to it, but I think you can ultimately. I think I'm coming at it from the perspective of an unaffirming person. I'm not making the equivalency of like us being gay to a divorce, but I'm trying to see it from the unaffirming perspective, that you can genuinely love another person and disagree with a decision, even if that decision involves somebody that they love. I think you can, but the nuance comes into, I thought about all day too, was, is this a primary issue or is this a secondary issue? And get into that later. But
well, what I think is so needed in this conversation, though, and Hunter, I think the reason why you made that example, and Liz, Priscilla gets so frustrated when I make those connections, and now I'm really sensitive to comparing being gay to something that we would all agree is a bad thing. But here's why I think we have to be very careful with it. But people that are unaffirming, they're unaffirming because they believe they have it in a sin category. That's right. Just where they have it. And so I think when I say that, I'm trying to get them to a point of, look, if you think it's sin, that's fine, but let's open our eyes to all the sins that we're all imprisoned in, that we're all unaware of. In America, it's probably wealth and having more than what we need, but let's just all go after God together. When I make those comparisons, it's kind of going to their minds and they think it's a sin. So it's like, okay, well, first step, if you think it's a sin, why can't we fellowship together still?
No, I get it. But it's like a hamster wheel. So It's like, when I totally understand what you're saying, they're putting it in a category that makes sense to them. And so that's them trying to rationalize it. And I 100% understand it. And I respect that, because at least their brain is thinking. I mean, we have to be people that are full of grace. Otherwise, we're going to cut everybody out of our lives and nobody's going to have these conversations. But it's like having a well of water that's completely muddy and just trying to go over to one side and keep it clean. It's not going to be productive if we keep comparing it to other sins.
All right. Anybody want to jump in here on Zoom?
I would love to say something. First of all, for me, I am legally and socially affirming, still struggling with the biblical aspect of it. I mean, I have friends who are trans, friends who are transitioning. A girl I know, she's 12, she's transitioning, and I support all of that because it's not bothering me one bit. And I think that's the issue that we as a nation need to address, is why are we constantly in each other's homes directing what we're all doing? It's none of our business. And I think that's a major issue here. What Liz does is none of my business. I'm so happy for her. But at the same time, I'm going to do what I feel is right in my home. And you have all these preachers out here who are going to the buffets every Sunday, and they got a big plank in their eye. And they're sitting there looking at everybody else.
And they make jokes about it.
Yes. And
that's their spiritual gift. My spiritual gift is eating, as they cannot even see their feet.
But you know what I mean? It's outrageous, just the biggest planks in these people's eyes. And yet they're so focused on people's sex lives. Give it a rest. I don't understand it.
Kelly, as someone who is wrestling with this, so you don't know Liz that well, you know her a little bit. If you were in small group with her, would you be able to function as this is my sister in Christ?
Absolutely.
We are
Yes.
seeking God together.
Yeah.
But Liz would not think that you love her though. Because I'm not making fun of you, Liz. I promise. Thank you, Kelly.
I just wanted to add that I really like the aspect Kelly was saying, the whole being in people's homes. It's such a privacy invasion of the church to want to control people's sex lives. 100% agree with that.
It's been politicized so much.
And it's not a political issue.
Correct.
Well, I think that's the problem. I think Christians and non-Christians, have allowed like the political environment to be the megaphone for what defines Christianity, and it's completely dangerous, right? They have the microphone, they have the megaphone, and in political theater, it's black and white. They're on this side or that side of the line. There's no gray, and I think Christianity, and Christians, are being told to stand on one side of the line or not, and it's incredibly guilt driven, and it's incredibly contemptuous. I think it's incredibly dangerous for all these reasons. I think that Joey has created this group. I think we have a responsibility as Christians to try to break free of that definition of or allowing that voice or that political voice to define what Christianity is for people. And so and that's the start. I think that is where I think a lot of people, if you're a non-Christian and you're looking at these conversations that are on TV, it's incredibly hurtful. It's very tough. And then you go into church and you hear, maybe something similar, but the Christ message is completely opposite. So where does that searching, that heart that is searching for God, what are they supposed to think? I think God doesn't want us to have that turmoil, that conflicting spirit. I would just, encourage everyone to disallow like that political talk. And I think it's incredibly important for you to turn it off, to turn it out, to tune it out. I mean, it's hard to say that, for people who are afflicted by those conversations, but that doesn't define Christianity for me. And it shouldn't define, we should not allow, as believers, should allow that to define what Christianity is or who Christ is. And I think that really is the heart of the matter, is like, who is Jesus?
Awesome. All right. We're going to shift on over to the chat real quick. So the first question, it's yes or no again, but have you knowingly hurt someone in the LGBTQ community and it was basically based on your beliefs? Yeah, most of us. Almost. Was the person almost gay, or are you almost?
You want to hear how bad this is?
Yeah, we're all dying to know how you almost hurt somebody.
So I grew up the same way as Joey, Pentecostal, evangelistic. Like
her dad and my mom are siblings.
I would like how I was very black and white. I didn't understand grace until about 10 years ago. My best friend, when I was in 5th grade, they moved down here from New York. It was her mom and my best friend and her mom's girlfriend. They were where we were living, and then they were about to move for the next school year across town. And I had written up this letter about how her mom's lifestyle was a sin and how if she did not change it, she was going to go to hell. By the grace of God, I did not give it to her. We're still best friends to this day. And I actually live across the street from her mom. And I love it. She's like my second mom. I'm so thankful that I never went through this.
Now it makes sense. Where was the grace of God for me when I showed up at the high school after my friend committed suicide? And I felt like as we were all mourning, I had to tell everybody that this is what happens when you don't have Jesus and you need Jesus. The grace wasn't there for me. Why not?
Gosh, Joey.
We're in the same damn family. He couldn't have helped me.
There's more favor on this side, I guess. I don't know.
All right, so let's give it a whirl in the chat. How many gay people you would consider yourself friends with?
It would be easier for me to count the number of straight people.
If you want to count the number of straight people, then do a negative.
Yeah.
There's some.
Joey, we were language checked. Can we use queer instead of gay?
Yes.
Makes it easier.
Queer. Because queer means LGBTQ.
More or less.
Wow. You assholes could have told me that a long time ago.
I just thought you were obsessed with dick.
No, it's just like I'll say something stupid like gay, and everybody. I could have just been saying queer the whole time. Dadgummit. Is togetherness in the church possible if we do not agree on the morality of living a queer lifestyle? And what I mean by that, I don't have, and if I did, screw Joey, who cares what expectations he has, but I don't have any expectations of anybody in the gay community to be together with unaffirming people. We have no idea what they went through, the hurt that they received, and all of that stuff. I do feel like, though, if a gay person can do that, then it's helpful. Like, it really is helpful. Is there a possibility right now in 2022 for there to be a real body of Christ? And let's just think lowercase c, like one little body of Christ where there's unaffirming and affirming. We all love each other. We're all there for each other. We all get along. We're all seeking God together.
I kind of want to speak to this really quick. For me, where I'm at right now, and honestly, where I've kind of always been at, leaning more towards like an affirming side, even growing up in like a fundamentalist school and church and everything, is that part of like the beauty of God's design for our personalities and our differences should be something that unifies us. So even if I see things differently than my husband or my friend or whatever, if we can come to like an agreement in respecting each other's point of views, then it's like an awesome thing. Like those things can coexist. I don't think we all need to believe the same exact thing for like unification. And the enemy or the world or whatever, it's like it can use those things, diversify us, but actually like the fact that we all think differently and like have different points of views, if we can like do so in like a kind and loving and respectful way, can unify us. It hurts me to see people just shun people, not accept them or respect them because they have a different point of view. If we can just hear them out, like that's what's going to unify us in the long run.
Let me ask you this, Quincy. It's a good opportunity because we're really not going to get into the theological debate sort of thing tonight. Before we officially started, and we made a deal that I get to call her husband Dog, not for any other reason. I said, "What's up, Dog?" And then it just stuck. Who would have thought that? From what I understand, Dog is unaffirming person. And these labels, we all know what they're talking about, but I think we're all probably irritated at the labels. But Quincy, defend your husband. What would you say if someone said, "What the hell? Are you serious, Quincy? You're married to someone that's not even affirming to my sexuality?" What would you say?
I would say that like, I understand where they're coming from. I have grown up through years of experience of being told something that was backed up to scripture. And if you are brought up in that, it's like, what else are you supposed to think? And I think that it is so based on like personality and the way that you are wired and the way that you think about things that's going to determine your outcome of your thought. I'm not going to think differently or worse about him because of that. I just think our differences and our thoughts can coexist. I think there is grace there.
Hunter, could you and Dog go have a beer and get to know each other, hang out? Like, knowing what you know, would you be comfortable with that?
Dog hasn't spoken for himself yet, so
he's not going to. Dog is never going to speak on
Come on, Dog.
Oh, okay.
What do you want to know? What do you want to know?
Here's where I was going to go, though, with this kind of topic, is that there is a distinction between someone thinking I'm going to hell, it's a heaven or hell issue, or it's a secondary issue. It would depend. It would be a very dysfunctional friendship if someone thought that I was going to hell. If it's a secondary issue, like he's unaffirming and it's a secondary thing, then yeah, that is not an issue for me personally at all. For my fiance, it might be, but not for me.
All right, Dog, speak for yourself here, Mr. Unaffirming, homophobic piece of shit bastard. And I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
He said it.
Hey, Quincy, he knows I'm kidding, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, he has no idea.
Yeah. You told me you hate me. So no, I think Quincy made some fairly accurate comments. I don't know if I'd agree with everything she said, but I do believe a lot of it does have to do with background. My parents did grow up, specifically my mom, grew up with like a fire and brimstone preacher. So a lot of what I knew,
her dad.
Her dad. So was the preacher. And so a lot of the stuff that, I mean, I wasn't necessarily like taught that, but I think over time, I think just certain comments, honestly, not on this topic, but racism comments and things like that definitely do, mess with you as you're growing up. But Quincy and I actually had this conversation earlier. I asked the question, do you think love and gay unaffirming love are the same thing? Like, are they relative? And can you do both? I believe in some ways, yes, you can love and be gay unaffirming. That's just my personal opinion. I do love people. I do not think that anybody's personal choice affects me in any way. And so I believe deep down that I'm going to love you no matter what. And that doesn't affect me on our friendship or affect me on what I think of you at all. It's purely a belief thing. And honestly, Hunter, when you just said, is it a primary or secondary issue, it honestly got me thinking a lot. And just hearing everyone talking about this as a sin issue, it's interesting because I do agree I believe, like, if it is like a sin issue, it's just like any other sin. I mean, if we were to all agree on that topic alone, it could be all relative if we say it is all a sin. And so we all are sinners. But that's just kind of my piece. I guess foundationally, I would just say that I do believe you can love and be gay unaffirming.
I'm going to step in really quick because I'm not trying to argue, but I'm just trying to...
Ooh, yeah, this is good. Everybody, let's listen. This is awesome.
Let's just have like a marriage counseling session.
No, we're not. We're just going to listen.
Well, like the conversation we have a lot is that like I do not and have never thought it's a lifestyle choice. I don't consider it a choice. And that's where I think it separates it from a lot of other sins. It's not something that, from what I know and from people that I've known that have, quote, struggled with it, or no one grows up and they're like 6 years old and they're like, oh, I think I'm an alcoholic, or I think I'm addicted to porn. It just is in such a different category in my mind that it's hard for me to even consider a lifestyle choice or even a choice at all in a lot of scenarios. I know there's different cases, but that's just where I'm at.
Yeah, even if I don't believe it's a sin, even if it was, we got to acknowledge, man, this is some different territory. Like, this isn't a category of itself. It feels like, Matt, I wanted to ask you, you've been in our community as not only queer, but also as a former Christian. We have unaffirming people in the Bear With community. I'm pretty sure at least 2 or 3. Have you felt loved, Matt? And accepted?
For the most part, yeah. I feel heavily accepted, or at the very least tolerated.
Liz, what are you thinking? I'm thinking the answer to that question for me would be, yeah, of course we can. That's what we're doing right now. Like, we're fellowshipping right now. You could make a case for this being church right now. We're talking about a very important thing, and a lot of us are kind of doing this we want to honor God in our thoughts. So we're trying to figure it out.
Well, I appreciated the first little monologue that Quincy, is that your name? Did I get that right? Okay. I appreciated the comments that you made. The only thing I would say is the difference is when my rights are in question. Absolutely, we can all have different opinions. And I think what you said was great, because that's what makes the world go round. If everybody was carbon copies of one person, then that would be a very strange world. I think all of our different opinions and feelings make the world great. However, when we have an opposing opinion that affects somebody's rights to get married or to have equal opportunity when they're applying for a job, that's when it is a little bit of a different conversation to have. And then my other thought that just kept coming through my brain is Jesus is all about love. And for some reason, humans love to focus on the sin. We focus on, is this sin like that sin? And is this sin like that sin? Why can't we just focus on the loving? And I'm pretty sure that would be a much more positive outcome than us pointing out all the negative. I'm a teacher. When I'm teaching in my class, if I'm constantly pointing out what every kid is doing that's negative, I'm not going to have a class that is learning and growing and evolving. But if I'm saying, hey, I really like how you do this, or I love that you do this, then I'm going to get a different outcome. Frustration comes in when everybody talks about Jesus and love, but we don't focus on that. Well, why don't we do something that actually looks like that?
As parents, we're supposed to be bringing out all of the good things that they're doing, cheering them on to point them toward those things that they're doing that are good. If God is our Father, he's going to be cheering us on toward that. So why aren't we doing that to our fellow Christians?
Yeah.
And on behalf of evangelicals, here's what a lot of them would say sincerely. Evangelicals, and some of them very sincere, would be, I do love you. And that's why I have to say this. It's not the flippant, and I'm going to go about my business and never think about you again. And it's someone who this burdens their heart.
Yeah. And I feel for those people. My heart goes out to those people, not because they think differently than me, but more importantly, they don't know that there's another option. You have grown up in this upbringing that has told you, it's like the game of, I was talking to my wife about this right before the podcast. It's like the game of telephone. Way back when the Bible was written, the Bible was written by a man. So you have him telling this story and then him telling this story, and it's how they're interpreted. And then it goes all the way down the line to all the different types of religions you have. And everybody thinks that their God and their religion is the right one. And I understand that urge and that feeling of, I have to let them know this because I love them. I get that because that's all they know. And I feel like it's just great to have these conversations because you don't realize that you can still have God in your life and Jesus in your life, but not necessarily subscribe to religion. And they just don't know that. And it's not trying to take them away from their faith or their beliefs. It's just trying to open their mind to, you have been told the same thing that was interpreted by another man over centuries.
Yeah, for sure. And I did, before Matt says something, I did want to say to Quincy, you said that people don't choose unless you're bisexual. Liz chose a woman and she had both choices. So you're wrong with the bisexuals. And I'm very disappointed in your lack of wokeness on that one, Quincy. Wow. Youngster.
I'll just leave the group.
Don't you dare leave the group.
I refuse to choose.
All right, Matt, you so politely have your hand up. Oh my gosh.
So I've got a couple questions from the YouTube chat I'm going to get to in just a second, but I wanted to say that I think I have a lot of grace for people that aren't affirming of me and the people that I love, because I think that they are victims of a smear campaign that's been going on for over 100 years. Had that not happened, had we not been taught for so long that this was so dangerous, so bad, so evil, and so deadly, that it was going to result in our damnation, I can only imagine that we would be in a much better position with this topic. I don't think that this was an issue until more recent history for people. It's just that we got too involved in determining what's okay for other people instead of sitting with our own sin.
For me, I can speak from my perspective is and it's horrible, but back then I just assumed, well, if they're okay with being gay, then they probably don't know God, because the Holy Spirit would reveal that to them. So my heart goes out to them because they're obviously not a Christian, and that's horrible. But I think that's how the line of thinking happens. Is there anybody else that was kind of brought up like me who would agree with that?
I think it's just the fact that they're living a lifestyle and an unrepentant sin. I think would be the official way to view it, is unrepentant sin.
When I say we have one friend that's like truly says like he struggles with homosexuality, like I wish he would like get on a call like this, but he probably won't because he's like kind of in the public eye, but like he is married with 2 kids and is choosing every day to just like deny himself of that because he thinks it's like his cross to bear of like not living out that lifestyle.
Yeah, that's torture.
I've had very in-depth conversations with him. And I don't really know how he's doing that. That is
something. You can only keep that up for so long. Wait 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah. I don't understand that point of view. And I'm not even queer. Like I can't understand how he's just okay with like fighting that battle every day. And
he's scared. I mean, gosh, I can only imagine how scared he was when he first started realizing those feelings and how that drove every decision he made. And I think that's awesome that he tried really hard. And I'm sure that he does love his wife, and I have no doubt that he loves his family and his children. But I can only imagine how scared he really is and why he made those choices. And he might not even regret those choices. They might not ever have, a divorce or anything like that. But to imagine how scared he was to go through with all of that just makes me so sad for him.
Same.
Hunter, with your hand up, what's up? Matt, you're such a good example.
Thank you.
As our resident moderate, for lack of a better word, I feel like there's not a lot of unaffirming voices being shared right now. So I feel obligated to step in and say a little bit, even from my perspective, as somebody who's fully affirming, engaged, it's not a bad thing for a Christian to be concerned about sexual morality. It's not a bad thing. Like, I've heard a lot of people say, like, I don't know why people care about what other people are doing. It's okay to care. Evangelicalism, it has a lot of problems. I don't think we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's my thing as the resident sort of moderate, is that I do think that sexual morality is important and should be thought about. And it's okay to have restrictions on it. I think it's good. Church history has proven that. I don't think we need to totally bash Christians for being concerned about sexual behavior, because it can hurt others. It can hurt you. In defense of maybe some unaffirming people that are not speaking up, as maybe a semi-evangelical myself, I don't think it's bad to be concerned about sexual morality. The Bible, even taken at a pretty broad progressive lens, is concerned about how we treat each other sexually and how we treat ourselves sexually. So that's just my 2 cents. And I felt obligated to kind of put that in here just in case there are unaffirming people out there that are like, why are they just bashing me? So
no, I appreciate it. That's why we have all these people together to round out the discussion. Matt, do you mind reading Ashley's comment? I think a lot of us could.
Actually, you don't want to?
I just didn't want to put her on the spot. See, I'm nicer.
What do you hate my voice, Joey?
No, I love your voice. I just was thinking, hey.
I feel like I got called on in class, but all people need to do is listen to the stories of the queer community inside and outside the church. I think for this conversation, it would be good to start with people inside the church to cultivate empathy, soft-heartedness, compassion, understanding. I can't imagine genuinely being a seeker of the ways of Christ and hearing those stories and still believing with authority that it's wrong. I don't like to use the word sin. To Liz's point, I think we focus way too much on what we shouldn't do versus what we should be doing. And I think one of the things we should be doing is listening to stories of other people so we can gain perspective, because I think that's what Christ would do. And instead, they ignore those perspectives, similarly to the issues of denying racism. And so they'll never get it.
That's good stuff.
I like you.
I told y'all I was mad.
I tell this story so many times because for me, it was a pivotal moment. It was, and it's someone Liz has tons of respect for, but it was Liz's old girlfriend that I felt, this girl is a better Christian than me, probably knows her Bible more than I do. And here she is sharing who she is. I know she's in contact with the Holy Spirit. Like, there's nothing about this, but like, we're the same, like we're talking the same language, some Christianese, some Holy Spirit stuff. And it shook me because I was like, how dare I walk away from this conversation and be like, she's obviously not hearing from the Holy Spirit. And so I don't think that I switched to affirming then, but I switched to I'm shutting the hell up about this conversation. And I'm not going to say anything towards gay people because I just talked to a friend of mine who I know has the Holy Spirit. And as far as I'm concerned, okay, then I'm listening. I'm listening. I'm wanting to learn.
Do I have the Holy Spirit, Joey? Is it a bird?
I actually, yeah, I'm a pretty mystical guy. I think that God is working through you, Matt, whether or not you believe that God even exists. And you're going to be
100%.
You're going to be so freaking happy when you get to heaven. Oh my gosh.
I'm going to have some extra rewards.
What we're going to do the next time we do this, we will have some theological nerdos, and maybe some of you on this Zoom are theological nerds, but we will definitely be bringing the theological nerds. Oh, I want to wrap it up with this question. Preparing for tonight, I wanted to find someone who I knew and respected and would be a good conversationalist in an environment like this, who was unaffirming and also had an open heart to learn and also pretty much a loving disposition to all people. I there's other reasons for striking out, but not one. Some of them responded from I just can't put myself out there. It's just ruthless. Like, yeah, I'd get the hell beaten out of me. Part of me wants to say it's a good thing that we're not putting up with hate, bigotry, and homophobia. But is it a good thing that someone like that is afraid to participate in the conversation?
It's a bad thing. I'll just go out and say it. It's not a good thing. If they want to come on, I will most likely be the most friendly, affirming person towards them, just to put that out there.
I mean, yeah, I don't think it's a good thing either. Whether you're affirming or unaffirming, we need to be able to have conversations where we can give other people a little bit of perspective while being polite and respectful to each other. Just like some queer people would be petrified to speak amongst a bunch of Christians who are unaffirming. That's not okay. But then it's also not okay on the flip side for somebody that's unaffirming to feel uncomfortable to talk to a bunch of queer people. I think if, we can't be one-sided with that. That would make me sad if somebody is, scared to do that.
Word up. All right, guys, we'll end it here. A pastor, a Jewish woman, and a gay guy walk into... I'm just kidding. I don't have...